Hello, welcome to Strictly Money at the News Forum, where all voices matter. I'm Saijal Patel. As we witness a record labor shortage and high inflation numbers in Canada, many workers are hoping for generous pay increases. But many economists are calling for a recession, and layoffs, especially in the tech sector, have already begun, leaving some employees and job seekers questioning their bargaining power. Brendon Bernard is senior economist with Indeed, and he joins me now with his take on what's happening on the job front. Brendon, great to have you on.
Thanks for having me.
So how would you read the employment picture right now?
Well, the Canadian labor market made a really rapid recovery from the depths that we saw in spring 2020, a recovery that actually was a lot faster than I think we were expecting at that time. But as the situation has progressed, we've seen job growth start to cool. So for the past few months, actually, Canadian employment has ticked down slightly, though the margin of error is pretty wide on that. I think but bigger picture, it does seem like the momentum has shifted from really high gear to now more neutral. And the question is why? And there's sort of two competing theories are that one, that the sort of increase in macroeconomic uncertainty that we've seen over the past few months is starting to feed into the job market. And on the other side, just the idea that, well, the unemployment is now at multi-decade lows, and there's not as many quick gains to have from the employment growth. And I think it's probably a combination of both.
So when you say unemployment, the picture, what kind of numbers are we looking at now, Brendon, compared to, say, pre-COVID?
Sure. So right now, in both June and July, the Canadian unemployment rate was 4.9%. For some context, since the modern labor force survey started in the mid 1970s, it has never been below 5%. Wow. So we're at multi-decade low unemployment, and it's not just and this sort of like strong job market isn't just showing up in fewer jobless workers actively looking for work. We also see it in things like fewer workers working part-time who'd prefer a full-time job, and other indicators suggesting we're currently in a real job seekers market.
Can you, Brendon, can you talk about the wage growth and have people been able to negotiate better pay?
Sure. So, well, something that we sort of expect to see in a tighter labor market like the one we're in, but never always translates one-to-one, is tougher hiring conditions for employers translating to wage gains for workers. Yeah. And so far this year, what we're seeing is a gradual acceleration of wage growth. So in the most recent job data, we had 5.2% year over year pay increases. Now that's the dollar amount, how much that's grown over time. That's not matching the roughly 8% rate of inflation that we've seen over the past few months. And so we're seeing signs that employers are raising wages. We can talk why in a second. But when it comes to keeping up with the cost of living, on the whole, paychecks are falling behind.
Yeah. Do you have a sense of how much people are able to negotiate their wages, at least in the jobs that they're in, because of inflation?
Sure. So, like when we think about why wages are rising right now, and a 5.2% rate is pretty solid by historical standards. I think there's kind of like two factors going on. One is sort of directly tied to conditions in the labor market. We've got unemployment, multi-decade lows, and job vacancies are quite elevated. There's a lot of hiring appetite around. And so this creates the conditions for workers to secure wage increases from their employers, because employers are thinking about both attracting new staff. There's a lot of job openings. They're trying to fill positions, and also retaining existing staff. As the unemployment rate comes down, the pressure on hiring from the existing pool of currently employed job seekers rises. And what that means is that employers have to consider retention as a key factor in raising wages, and we see that in surveys of employers. Not just because the potential for there are opportunities for their existing workforce to find new work elsewhere, but also if they were to lose a worker, that it might be harder to backfill that position, and so that raises the stakes on retaining existing staff. The flip side, though, is also around the rising cost of living, and I think this is another factor that's also at play as wages rise.
Welcome back. Brendon, before the break, you were talking about the impact of high inflation and how that's translating to higher wages. Please continue.
That's right. So just wrapping up on why employers might be raising wages today. We hear some talking about the impacts of a tighter labor market, but there's also an impact of the rising cost of living, and this is a trend that's affecting everyone. And I think especially employers looking to maintain morale, cost of living increases are definitely something people are considering as well.
Okay. I want to get your thoughts on sectors, right? Because we're starting to see a number of layoffs, specifically in the tech sector, Shopify, for example, Wealthsimple. What's your data telling you? I know we do have a board, but what's your data telling you in terms of what sectors might be vulnerable?
Well, when we think about tech right now, tech has been booming in the Canadian economy. One of the key drivers of job growth compared to where we were pre-pandemic, and we see it in our job posting numbers. Job postings, for instance, in software development, have been one of the strongest categories on our website, and they remain way above pre-pandemic levels, even stronger than the overall trend. But they've also cooled a bit over the past few months. And so I think we're seeing two things going on. Still really elevated demand for workers in tech, but at the same time, coming off of even higher exceptional levels. And I think this might be something that we see in the tech sector more broadly. So far, tech-related jobs, I think, have held up pretty well, but they're coming off of just such a rapid growth that sort of like an exhaustion of that boom could be setting in the coming months.
Okay. Brendon, I want to get your thoughts on this great resignation and where we stand now, right? Because it wasn't that long ago. That's what we were talking about. It was in the headlines. Do employees still have the upper hand, do you think?
I think they do right now. When our labor market data, including the public data, is pretty up to date. We've got data through mid-July, a multi-decade low unemployment rate, and job postings we're seeing on Indeed still quite elevated, up over 60% from pre-pandemic levels. So I think that's an environment where still today, conditions are looking quite good for job seekers, for people looking to potentially make a move. And one of the key things, especially for younger workers, when thinking about making move, is moving up the career ladder. Those conditions still exist today. The riskier thing, though, is where things are looking 6 months from now, because there's a lot of economic uncertainty. We don't know whether we'll be heading into a recession or something else, but the outlook is definitely a bit murkier than it was, let's say, 6 months ago.
What about working from home, right? This has been a big debate, and you can see that a lot of employees have used that as a bargaining chip. Is working from home still an important offering for employees that they want this? And I guess the flip side of it is, are employers rethinking its effectiveness? Because you're starting to see those signs as well.
Yeah. So when we track work from home in job postings, we track the share of job postings mentioning remote work-related terms, and we see that they're still quite elevated. I don't think this is a trend that's going away anytime soon, where relevant, where it's relevant for specific jobs. At the same time, I do think that the nature of work from home is changing a bit. More hybrid work. We see it in the StatCan data. More and more people are splitting time between at home and the office, and I think this is a trend that's likely to continue. At the same time, I think there's some areas of the economy, I think, like areas like tech and marketing, where fully remote work is still going to remain have an important presence going forward. It's both, and from employers' point of view, it's a perk that can help attract candidates in terms of location flexibility, but it also, from a kind of a bigger picture scale, expands the candidate search by breaking the link between having to live within commuting distance of the office.
For sure. Brendon, we only have 30 seconds left. One piece of advice that you can give to employees who are looking for a job.
Sure. So, I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty out there. I would say, though, that like right now is still a good time to be looking for a job. I think the labor market conditions where we're at right now are still tilted in favor of the job seeker, in favor of job seekers. And while that comes with some risk, making a move when the economic environment is uncertain, there are also lots of benefits for finding that right position.
All right, Brendon, thanks for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Brendon Bernard, senior economist with Indeed. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.